Thank you for joining me for this expose of one of our most profound emotions. This model is the fruition of many years of dealing with very frustrated children, adolescents, adults, which is actually most of us much of the time. The story I'm about to tell you is the ultimate result of looking at frustration through certain lenses. First of all, attachment. That human drive for togetherness that is absolutely preeminent, an understanding of emotion, including the purpose of emotion and how the brain actually works, an understanding of how potential unfolds quite spontaneously if conditions are conducive. This story is a huge story, an incredibly important story, a truly amazing story, providing an inside glimpse of nature's brilliance in taking care of us. Now, the complete story of frustration would take volumes. I don't have the time to write it, and undoubtedly you wouldn't have the time to read it. So I'm going to try to tell it to you in a digest form with the hope that in this digest, or should I say digestible form, it doesn't lose any of the salient elements. It is through these lenses that I have come to know frustration intimately, and in so doing, come to appreciate it immensely. And I would like to reintroduce frustration to you through these lenses. Not that any of you need an introduction to frustration, but to introduce it to you through these lenses. I'm going to personalize it a bit because frustration has quite a life of its own. In fact, when I first started putting the pieces together, I did it under the title, The Life and Death of Frustration, and then the Life Cycle of Frustration. Now, we'll start with the fact that frustration, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the unsung heroes of the emotional brain, of the whole brain, really, whose work is often camouflaged and reputation tainted or sullied by some of its more undesirable derivatives, or to keep it in line with the personalization, offspring. I bring a few of them to the fore here that really hide frustration that is underneath. Tantrums, we could add tirades, suicidal impulses, guilt, frustration-based depression, obsessive self-improvement. We could add compulsive problem solving, anger, violence, aggression, self-attack, and so on. So I've alluded to the fact that frustration has work to do. Indeed, it does. In fact, it is a first responder, also called a primal emotion, to incoming input. It sits just inside the sensory gate to the brain to scan for any indication that something is not working. In fact, that's the best working definition of frustration. It works hard to signal the rest of the brain and pushes forcefully for change. Now, emotion means emotion, to move, and frustration certainly does that. It does it powerfully, forcefully, and it does it pretty well unseen. That is outside of our awareness. We don't even have to be conscious of what it's doing. In fact, most of the time, we're not conscious of it at all. But what is really significant here is that frustration, like all primal emotion, is blind in itself. It's just giving a signal that something is not working. The insight about what isn't working and when it wasn't working and the details linking all of the information around it is dependent upon feelings. And so it's blind itself with added insight dependent upon being adequately felt. More on this a bit later. Lastly, but not least, frustration can have multiple outcomes depending upon the situation and the circumstances, hence the analogy of the traffic circle. So frustration can have multiple outcomes, in this case, 3 possible outcomes. In this case, the traffic is going to go to the right. Now, the first outcome, as I've already stated, its primary purpose is to effect change. Now, there'd be no reason for change if we were satisfied with the status quo. Frustration provides notice to the problem-solving brain that something isn't working. It also provides a motivation to effect change of some kind in the hopes, of course, that if change happens, it will somehow fix the problem. Now, if it does, the story of frustration comes to an abrupt and successful end. The work is done. The problem is, of course, there are so many things that we are up against that cannot be changed. Holding on to good experiences, altering time, changing the past, other people's decisions, getting one's way all the time, holding close those we are attached to, bridging death, and so on and so on. The good news is that there is an inbuilt program in the brain for this. If up against futility, then it is us that needs to be changed. And so it is the story of adaptation, changed from inside out, deeply changed. We're talking about deep and transformative change here to be able to come to live with what it is that we cannot change. Now, this is dependent upon feelings of frustration here, turning into feelings of sadness. That is being able to feel the futility that is encountered. If frustration can turn into sadness, think mad to sad in a toddler or tantrums to tears. If frustration can turn into feelings of futility, the work of adaptation can proceed. This is a brilliant plan, a brilliant plan. That is, the role of frustration is to effect change or to change us, to be changed. A brilliant plan. It sends shivers down my spine whenever I think of it again. However, if frustration fails in its work, it can neither effect satisfactory change, and it doesn't turn into the sadness that can bring adaptation. This is where frustration turns foul. We might say it fails in its work. Frustration has become thwarted. It turns foul and seeks for release in some way or another. This is where it turns into impulses to attack, and which seeks release, some kind of release, some kind of venting, and it will drive eruptions of attack in one way or another. That is, unless the capacity for mixed feelings has developed in the child. If the capacity for mixed feelings, that is, if impulses to attack immediately bring, on the other hand, but I don't want to get into trouble. I don't want to hurt my sister. I don't believe in aggression or something like this. On the other hand, then it sends the traffic down for another attempt at change or adaptation. But this takes time. There's a place in the brain reserved for it. We could call it the mixing bowl of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, but it takes 5 to 7 years for it to even get up and running. And then only if conditions are conducive. And so I experienced working with many adults who never actually developed this capacity. And so frustration led to impulses to attack. Now, the release of these impulses, attacking impulses of foul frustration or failed frustration, or thwarted frustration, we may call it, can take many forms. And I've outlined those forms here. As you can see, there are many forms: sarcasm and insults, irritability and impatience, hitting and fighting, fits and tantrums, violent fantasies, even ignoring, shunning, and ostracizing. I won't take the time to go over all of them. You get the picture. The picture isn't pretty when frustration is frustrated or has been thwarted. You could say we're doubly frustrated, frustration. from tantruming toddlers to suicidal teens, from irritable parent syndrome to lashing out at loved ones. The most or the form of attack here, it depends upon one's inherent nature, one's bent, so to speak, as well as the level of emotional maturity. And also the form of attack is influenced very much by who it is that the child is attached to. The key insight here, what is absolutely significant, when you see this, you should read this. That is, when you see a manifestation of foul frustration, an eruption of attacking energy, it should now occur to you that something isn't working for the child. Something isn't working for the student, for the adult. This insight is phenomenally transformative in guiding interaction, to see the child as frustrated rather than as misbehaved, violating, and so on. So how exactly does the story of frustration turn into the story of attack? The story of frustration, now you can see, or the story of attack is a sub-story of the story of frustration. And I will tell the story as simply as I can. There are 3 precursors that are part of every story of attack, regardless of its form, including how harmless or how violent it may be. The first, you will have guessed it, highly frustrated. Whether one is aware of it or not, something isn't working for the child or adult. Whatever it is certainly important to them. Secondly, futility is encountered. Otherwise, frustration would come to an end, but that futility is not felt. Sadness is missing. Or slow to sadness, we could speak. So highly frustrated, slow to sadness. Because if mad turned to sad, if sadness was felt, then it would proceed to bring adaptation, deep transformation, to be able to deal with things that aren't working. You see, the brain has to feel its way through when it comes to the work of frustration. Now, once it turns foul and it turns into impulses to attack, now, the only hope would be that these attacking impulses are tempered. As I said, the capacity for, on the other hand, feelings. And so this will lead to attack if attacking impulses are not untempered. At least at that time, it doesn't bring forth, on the other hand, I feel the impulse to attack, but I don't want to get into trouble. I don't want to hurt my loved ones, and so on. Simply put, what sets the stage for attacking impulses to erupt is being highly frustrated, slow to sadness, and lacking mixed feelings. The perfect emotional storm for frustration coming to attack. Now, these are the antecedents of aggression. The problem with the eruptions of attack is we usually think we have to teach the child a lesson, and so we think consequences. Now, when you actually think consequences, will these add frustration? Absolutely. Are these encounters with futility? That's the whole point, but the child isn't feeling futility, so it's going to make matters worse. And this is what we have been doing because we have not understood the story of frustration. We've been making matters worse. Now, I'm going to take 3 quick walks around this traffic circle where attack is a typical outcome, each time looking through a different lens. First of all, the lens of attachment. Now, what is it that gets us frustrated the most? Well, attachment is our preeminent need. Togetherness is our preeminent need. So when we're facing thwarted proximity, we can't make contact, we can't make a connection, a loss, a separation. When we cannot do this, attachment's not working is the primary source of frustration. It just fills the traffic circle. It drives this whole thing. Secondly, attachments are also a primary source of futility. We can control many things, but we can't control whether somebody likes us or wants to be with us or will hold on to us or even invite us into their existence. So attachment is a huge source of futility. And of course, sadness is a very tender emotion. Most of us only feel safe to feel sad when we're in the company of those that we're attached to, when it's a safe relationship. Many children, many adults have no safe place to cry. And of course, if the eruptions of attack lead to further disconnections, ascending to one's room, some way or another, a reaction that increases the separation, breaks the connection, we have the makings of the perfect emotional storm, an escalating cycle. Unfortunately, this is what we've been doing because we haven't understood the story of frustration. So what are the implications here? Well, they're simple. That doesn't mean easy. It's simple. Look around, see what where the child is facing separation, reduce the separation being faced. And especially when eruptions occur, don't let these attacks disrupt the connection. Find a way of holding on. Find a way of coming alongside frustration. Find a way of getting alongside that frustration. I see you're frustrated. That frustration needs to come out. Here, let me help you find a way. A completely different dance can evolve. Well, let's look at the feeling factor. This is a huge factor. First of all, frustration has to be felt, to be managed. As I said, most of the work of frustration is unseen. It's invisible. We don't even feel the frustration that is within us. It can surprise us, blindside us, or we don't feel it at all. We can't manage an emotion that we don't feel. Secondly, remember that feelings are the eyes of frustration. And so frustration must be felt rather correctly for change to be effective. If it's just a general signal and the brain kind of fills it in with a cognitive backfill, oh, I think it's that the problem, or this is the problem, we don't really feel it adequately, then the change won't be effective. Now, the futility encountered must be felt for frustration to end and adaptation to occur. Again, as I said, the brain needs to feel its way through the maze of life. Adaptation is an emotional issue, not a cognitive issue. We need to actually feel the futility encountered, the keen disappointment, the sadness, the grieving that is there. And of course, we need to have our mixed feelings. The capacity needs to develop, and we need to gather our mixed feelings. A lack of mixed feelings leaves attacking impulses untempered. And so these are the feelings that must be there. Now, there is one more here. Feelings may be defensively inhibited if too vulnerable to bear. If they have become inhibited, this more systemic, and of course it creates the scenario for attack to occur. The implication here is to provide safe sanctuary for feelings. Now, what is the safe sanctuary for feelings? Well, we mentioned one, which is safe relationships, a safe place to cry. If it's a safe place to cry, it will be a safe place for other feelings. What is the other safe sanctuary? Well, this brings us to the third quick walk around, the play factor. Play is a safe sanctuary for feelings. It is when emotions are at play that they can most be felt. Now, play is hugely important here because before the child has developed the capacity for mixed feelings, they need, when they have impulses to attack, this needs to be taken into play. This is actually the first intervention. How can I take those impulses to attack when I say, let me help you find a way? It should be taking it to play. Playful attack, playful destruction play. All of these plays, well, they engage in other play to build their mixed feelings because prefrontal cortex now we know is built in play. In the meantime, we should do as much as possible to give them play that involves problem solving and construction play, making things work. Because if they're playing at making things work, it heads it off at the pass. Frustration will move into this kind of play. The feeling factor is huge. And last but not least, it is much easier to access sadness in the play mode through stories, through music, indirectly. It's very hard to access directly. One step removed, and play can even make sadness feel sweet in drama and theater where it can be played. The implication here is we need to do our utmost to increase access to emotional playgrounds. We've been thinking that play is frivolous. In fact, it is the key to civilization frustration, according to the ancient Greeks. And I believe they were onto something. They made room for eruptions of attack in their games. They joined frustration to sadness in their tragedies. They made mastery of music a must for their children, to access sadness that could only be touched one step removed in this music. Our challenge is to give play a chance to shoehorn our frustrated children into the society in which we live. We have thought it frivolous. It turns out to be the crucible of civilization for society at large and for each individual. And now to our last slide here. To create a story of frustration with good endings. This is our challenge. This is our challenge, where frustration leads to change and ends in change, where frustration, if we cannot effect change, leads to adaptation. These are the best endings, and if it needs to go into attack, at least not attack that violates, but attack that is safe from repercussions, that doesn't make matters worse. Well, what is the answer? If there's a bottom line to this, what would be the answer? Is to create a story of frustration with good endings. We need to cultivate a healthy relationship with frustration, whether that be in ourselves, whether it be in our students, or whether it be in our children. Well, what does it mean to cultivate a healthy relationship? Well, first of all, it means that we accept that it exists. We may not agree with it, but we need to accept that it exists. It needs some space to work, some space to relieve itself without doing harm if it cannot lead to change or adaptation. You see, the ultimate challenge for us as parents, as teachers, is to be traffic directors here, sitting in the middle, directing the traffic to where it most should come. And sometimes it's in directing it to playful attack. But we need to know the story of frustration. We need to know the traffic circle of frustration. We need that kind of knowledge of frustration to be that kind of traffic director, nudging towards the outcome most appropriate to the situation. Secondly, call it by name. Frustration. It's not that hard. Not anger, not violence, not aggressive, not being mean, not all the other names that it can be called. Call it by name. I see you're frustrated. Reframe as needed. They may be calling it something else. Reframe it, call it by name. That will allow you to focus on the frustration, which is key to being able to come alongside of it. You see, we can't help others if we can't come alongside of it. And how do we come alongside of them? By focusing on the frustration. We can always come alongside frustration. We can grant individuals that they can experience something not working. We can't make everything work for a child, no matter how much we love them. So this is our way of coming alongside. You see, when we can come alongside the frustration in ourselves, even in our loved ones, it unites us instead of divides us. Instead of fighting it, we can help frustration do its work. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. I wish each and every one of you great insight and wisdom in helping frustration do its incredible work, because frustration needs our help, and we need to understand the work of frustration to be able to help it. Thank you.
All right. Well, as Gordon is, Dr. Neufeld is making his way to his computer from the studio. Welcome to those that joined since the beginning. That was pretty close. That was pretty close to 18 minutes. I mean,
incredible walk around. Wow.
a little bit more, but yeah. That was yeah, so much to think about, so much to unpack. I hope you all were able to come away. I know some of you were like, whoa, there's so much here. Will we get to see this again? And I'll just say, for those of you that are curious, if all goes well, we are hoping to post this on our website as a free resource, because we would like everybody to hear about it and to get some more glimpses into what's underlying the frustration. So yes, just a reminder about the chat. We'll, oh, good. Here he is. There he is, coming to us now from his computer. Welcome.
Well,
I kind of just blew right past that 18-minute mark.
Oh, but
If anyone
only
was
only
keeping
15
track, I just don't think I'm an 18-minute guy. You know, there were so many examples I wanted to give, so much to flesh out. I thought, oh my goodness, you know, it just going on it. My mind was exploding about all the things that I don't have time to say. I don't have time to say that. I don't have time to say that.
Yeah.
So I have to edit here to be able to do this. But I mean, I still understand why I need to be able to present it so that it fits within people's allowable time to view it. But
well, and this is something I know that you could talk about this for a week.
yes, very much so.
So this was a good challenge. I mean, this was not an easy challenge to bring it down, but I so appreciate it. You know, I just have to say, this is something that I think of when I first heard this probably 15 years ago now, and first really as I was finishing my my counseling degree at the time, and everything was about anger management. And when I heard this, the light bulbs just went off in my head, and I thought, oh my goodness, here's a way of understanding this that takes away the need to know who is right, who is wrong, what kind of who's to blame.
It's a non-fault thing.
It's just about getting to this underlying frustration that we all have as humans, that sometimes things don't work. Sometimes things shouldn't work. And sometimes, and to be able to see that this was, it gave me it gave me hope. And I think of how much hope it has given, countless families that I've worked with since that time as I've introduced this. So it's been such a valuable frame of reference for me.
I just have to share with people that it was one of Tamara's first 10 words was, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. So yes.
Not surprised. Yeah.
it's your calling.
It's my calling.
I think frustration has found its champion, Gordon. I just don't know anyone who can put such insight into such a challenging primal emotion that we oftentimes fight and want to get rid of without understanding so clearly the words and the purpose, of this emotion to change or be changed. And how would we grow, develop, and face life's greatest futilities without this workhorse of an emotion? But without the insight, without words, without consciousness, my goodness, do we ever trip over this? I mean, in myself and in my kids, it's just so easy, to do this.
Yeah. Well, and there's quite a few questions that are coming in, and I think that, I know I have so many things that come to mind too, that I'd like to see us speak to. But one of the questions, and I think this is something that probably a lot of people have, is with these insights that we talk about coming alongside frustration, we talk about making room for that. How do we do this? How do we help our children with this when sometimes our own frustration, when we trip all over, sometimes that attacking energy, the way it's coming out, the spitting, the biting, the attack on us sometimes as parents, the words, the cruel words that come out of one's mouth, coming from just a very instinctive place.
Yes.
What do we do with that?
Well, that's where to start. Absolutely where to start. And that's why I tried to speak to it. I didn't have time, but the same dynamics apply to us. To be able to say to ourselves when we can feel the attacking impulses, when we feel we want to bite their head off, when we feel that we just want to yell, to attack with our tone of voice, it is to be able to say to ourselves, just as we would say to our child, ourselves, I get it. I'm frustrated. I mean, just thinking this in the head, I'm frustrated. This isn't working for me. When you say this isn't working for you, again, frustration is non-fault. It's not like anger, where it's somebody else's fault. It's not like guilt, where it's my fault. It's not like shame, when something is wrong with me. These are all secondary. They involve the attribution of blame. Frustration is not. And so I can come alongside of myself. This isn't working for me. Now, that's true. It's not working for me. And then it's about the same. If I don't feel by mixed feelings by that time, I feel like yelling at my child, but I don't want to scare them. I don't want to hurt them. If I don't feel my mixed feelings, then it's time to stick in the clutch, so to speak. It should be the orange light, the orange flag that goes on to us, is that we've got to suspend the interaction, give ourselves a timeout. We'll talk about this later, and get to the place where we can keep our frustration in view, feel the sadness we need to feel if there's something about this that, we're tripping over immaturity. There's nothing we can do to grow up a child in a minute, whatever it is, and our mixed feelings. So that the same thing applies to us. And that is why this is the key to civilized, humane interaction, is our relationship with frustration. So it's the same everywhere. And it's probably, how do you not get frustrated with your children? I never was not able to. Sorry, Tamara. I never was not able to, but how we come to handle it is hence the traffic circle.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a lot here. You did a little bit of a quick walk around play, and I think that I know has been a really important piece for myself, is finding some of those outlets in play. Can I, find my playfulness
Yes.
when I'm in that place? Can
Yes.
can I use play to get some of this out? And maybe it's even coming alongside with my children and saying, we're going to go throw rocks in the pond for a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't have to say why I'm frustrated. I don't have to. It's just to be able to find something.
But as a parent, you should love your child. And so when you're frustrated with them, it seems like the opposite. And that's where you need to give herself permission, that's why frustration is okay. It is just, something about this is not working. The brain gets it, and it's not working. We just have to, keep it from turning foul. And if it does turn foul, to have our mixed feelings about it, so that we don't hurt the ones we love.
Yeah. I'm wondering how many people would identify with the irritable parent syndrome, and what honesty there to be able to diagnose ourselves. And, a couple of things come to mind as you both were talking, is that I think before I had a greater relationship myself with frustration, I thought my feelings were reality. I thought my feelings were my feelings, the only feeling. I thought frustration was the only feeling I had about my child. It was just the most intense one in the moment. But I realized the more I could step back, I realized that was just one of many emotions about my child. And so I wish I knew that earlier, that wasn't actually my true heart's content. It was just my heart in that moment.
Yes.
But what I did find the most helpful for me, and it's so true what you say, Gordon, that we have to feel our frustration. It has to be expressed. We have to have a name for it. We have to feel it vulnerably. You can't have a relationship with it if you can't feel it inside of yourself. So when you feel it inside of yourself, you're like, oh gosh, here I am again. I'm that irritable parent again. And I don't want to be that irritable parent. I have so many more intentions for myself. But when you can feel it, when you can put your words on it, what I found the most helpful was that beautiful process of mixing those emotions, of finding the antidote to the frustration, which is always love. It's always caring. I trust now that it's there. Now that I'm 18 years into it, it's taken me a while to trust that it's always going to be there. I can always find it. I always can touch it. But I found the most helpful times that I could have a relationship with frustration was not when I was having it intensely. It was when I was able to reflect on it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was in reflection. I used to say, okay, Deb, let's do a post-mortem. Okay, irritable parent, let's do a little post-mortem on you every night. And I'd be like, stupid parent, don't ever admit that you did that. You do this for a living. Gordon would be very mad at you. And I'd have this horrible conversation with myself. But then I would form in that moment, in that reflection, from my mixed feelings, from my feelings, from the vulnerability of it, my intentions to wake up and say, oh my gosh, they're going to have another temper tantrum today. My kid is still a teenager. I still have to face frustration, and I get another chance. And it was then that I think the dignity that comes in having a relationship with your feelings comes.
Yes.
But it took me so long to get there. It's like, why couldn't I get there when they were born instead of whatever teenage year they were in?
We fight it. We don't want to be upset. We fight it. And that's the point here. That like, I like what you said, Deborah. Like, frustration has found its advocate. That's why, yes. You know, it's the brain couldn't work without it. It just notifies the brain that something isn't working here. And it's the fact that we have tried to sanitize our too much. We just want the feelings we like. We don't want
Amen to that.
we don't want the whole gamut, and it's opening up. And that's why, you know, I mean, what was the main thing today? Frustration is our friend. It is trying to take care of us. It is trying to do our best for us. And the same thing is true for the toddler and for the teenager and so on. And the more room we can give it, the less room it takes. But we have to start giving it a bit of room, and then we're not working in opposition to what our brain is trying to do, but we can start coming alongside our own brain, and that's the beauty of it when you see it. And that's what I said. It just sends shivers. I forgot what it is. Is it up your spine or down your spine? I couldn't think quick enough when I said it.
I think it goes both ways now. I think
No,
that's
it goes both ways. Okay.
Yeah.
But it was a
Well,
shivers up and down, because I just see if people could only see what I see, this is brilliant. Nature's plan is brilliant, absolutely amazing. We can relax and know nature's for us, not against us.
Well, it tells us something. Like, I think that's it. Like, there's a message to the frustration. It tells us something's not working. It's not a disorder. It's actually the brain trying to communicate something to us. And I think there's this, I know as a parent myself, I also have this impulse to make things work for my children.
Yeah.
I want things to be better. I don't want to see them upset. And yet there are some things that just don't work and won't work.
Yes.
And I think of an about turn that I did just even recently. This was, well, a few years ago at the beginning of 2020 in COVID, and my daughter, who was then I'm not sure, 19, something like that. To do the math, it's too much.
Right.
And she had just learned that her first year university that she was so excited about was going to be online. So she wasn't to go to Montreal, which was part of the big motivation. And I mean, and everybody has their own stories of this, but in this particular moment, I just wanted to make it better. And I was like, well, we can fix this. We can paint your room. We can, and I stopped myself and I went, oh my goodness, this is so frustrating. This is so disappointing. I went to how do we fix it? And sometimes that's how we understand the word adapt, right? Is that we just fix it, and we change ourselves into a pretzel. But this was something bigger than me. And oh my goodness, I couldn't fix it. She wasn't going to get that year back. And as soon as I changed my tune, I changed my tune and I said, oh my goodness, this is so disappointing. And it didn't take much. And the tears were just there and the sobs. And it's like,
see, and that's you coming alongside of yourself. And that is, and again, when you say this isn't working, like when it's frustration rather than, guilt. I should be able to make everything work for my child. There's something wrong with me, etc. Or rather than anger, she shouldn't be so, demanding. She shouldn't have set that expectation. And we go all the way around it, which is our cognition getting involved. Why I call frustration primary, because a primal emotion can function without any cognitive input. The cognitive input goes into whose fault is it when it comes to frustration, anger, guilt, or something wrong with me. But that's why getting underneath it enables us to come alongside ourselves and come alongside our toddler or our teen or our partner.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, and there's so much more grace for ourselves and our imperfections when we can realize, you know, what a struggle some of our big emotions can be, and what a huge task this is of us. And who could ever blame a parent for wanting to fix something for their child? I mean, it's
Yes,
our
exactly.
Achilles heel. It's what we're motivated to do, and it's again having some consciousness that fixing everything doesn't actually serve them well in that respects. But yeah, it's such a powerful emotion. I mean, it was something that I know I personally wanted to not even have a name for. It was just bad, and I think it is so pathologized. I think even just from, our early days as children in a school setting where our frustration has no room. That can also be the same in our own homes. And so right off the get-go, we don't even have a space or a name for it. And
That's
here
right.
we are as parents trying to deal with the most immature people who will trip all over, who will bring this emotion to the fore. And so, what a gift it is. Like what you're saying is actually quite profound for a child. It's quite a gift to be able to have a first word as frustration. Like,
Mhm.
I think we have to realize, how wonderful that is, just even being able to do that, and the
Yes.
invitation that is there. That is
Yes.
significant from where we have come
Mhm.
culturally, for sure.
Yeah.
And it isn't the language where we can come alongside. I work with so many who all they could say is swear at you, or I'm pissed off, or something like this. But it was this way, and the ability to see beyond it. This
Mhm.
isn't working for you, is it? I see that you're frustrated. This isn't the way you wanted this to go. Immediately softens you, allows you to come alongside, no matter how much you're introduced to it. It's all in a name, so to speak.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so important that we call it rightly, even though we may be interacting with somebody else that isn't. If we call it rude or mean, if we call it, there's so many things we can do. It's impossible to come alongside of that. And when we call it frustration, we go to the very core of what it is to be human. To be human is to be frustrated. Then we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I think it's worth saying again, because I know this question has come up a little bit here about the difference between frustration and anger. And I know we've alluded to it, but
Mhm.
I'll just say again, because in my experience, and I shared this, that when I first heard this, anger management was all the buzz, and understanding that the anger has to do with it being somebody's fault,
Yes.
right? That there's some blame attached to it. It may be very justified. It's not a question of whether that's justified or not. It could actually be somebody's fault. The point is that we can't get to the underlying frustration if we stay in the anger, if we
That's
stay in
right.
the blame.
Mhm.
And so
When we, yes.
it's allowing it to get to the underlying frustration where it can move and that adaptation can happen. It's very tricky to get to adaptation from anger
It is.
because we're up here and
Or
it's
from
more
guilt.
cognitive. Yeah.
It's very difficult because in guilt, you keep on trying to make it better, or you punish yourself. There's not the feeling of just the futility that needs to be felt. And anger, there's never the futility because you're always trying to get the other person to see it. You go for justice, you go for revenge. It's in frustration. Something didn't work for me. And it's from frustration that you can coming alongside that it descends into the sadness. So that's where you're more likely to see, oh my goodness, I'm encountering some futility here. I'm up against something that I'm not in control over, something that is out of my control. And that's where the sadness comes, that is transforming for us or for the child or whatever. That is the work. That is where frustration converts itself to sadness, passes the baton, so to speak. That's why I call it double portfolio. It's like frustration has the two most important portfolios in the brain. When you see this, you say, oh, we got to help it. We got to help it. We got to help frustration do its work, because it's such important work to do.
Mhm. Well, I think that when we use the words "I'm angry," of course, it takes us to the head. We're looking for the
Yeah.
reasons. It's a cognitive process. In fact, we often say to children, "Well, why are you so angry?" And we court this as a cognitive question, and
Mhm.
it takes us away from the root of it,
Yeah.
because we're going in through the head. But if we understood that underneath, and if you peeled the onion, what you're looking at the very seed in the very middle of this is this root emotion that's just kind of grown, taken more words, taken a cognitive turn, taken some blame. And I love the word attack, actually, because when I'm angry, I'm full of that attacking energy, and I can hear it in my voice and in my
Yes.
motivation in my head. Usually that's where I like to keep it best of all, is attack, attack, attack. And then you think, oh, I can't believe I thought that. And then you realize, oh my goodness, Deb, why are you having these thoughts? And it's, well, what feeling is driving it? And when I get back to that question, what is the feeling that is driving all of this energy, this thinking, this attack, this anger? When I can dial it back down into the root of it, then I can make headway. But sometimes I think it's about noticing that it's gone to attack, and realizing that we're
That's right.
so far away from the
Yeah.
frustration, from the primal nature of it.
We're so far away. I'll never forget my interaction with my youngest son. I think he was only 3, and he bursts into tears and say, "Daddy, Daddy, stop hitting me." And I respond by saying, "Braden, I am not hitting you. Whatever gives you the idea that I'm hitting you?" And he, tears down his face, "Daddy, you're hitting me right now. You're hitting me with your words."
Yeah.
And it's just, yes, it was
Oh,
an attack, and we attack in the tone of our voice. We can attack with our eyes and what we do with them. We can attack in a way our voice goes cold. And we can
Or no
attack
word.
in so many ways, no words at all. We can attack in our ignoring. But
Yeah.
it's like you say, Deborah, when we recognize that, oh my goodness, I'm attacking, that is the sign for coming alongside of ourselves, just like we would the other. Something's not working for me right now. I'm frustrated. And then once we have named it, we can start the traffic circle.
Yeah.
Whether I can effect change, I need to feel some sadness, or I can find some way of expressing it that doesn't is not without, or it does not have repercussions. I can take it to play. But you can't really walk the traffic circle. You can't be a traffic circle director. I stumbled over that word, didn't I? Or something like that. The traffic circle director, when you haven't named it, and the power of a name. The power of a name, and that's why if in any other name, you don't get to walk those avenues.
And that's why the reframe, you said that in there. I wrote that down. You said, call it by name, reframe as needed. And so if it is the anger and the guilt, and there's other words for it, or mean, or if we can name it as frustration, it's
Yes.
a game changer. And I wanted to come back to just something you were saying earlier about the adaptation, about how when we can bring it to the sadness. And I think back to, when a child is in the intensity of that moment, the frustration is too big. It's like it blows out of the traffic circle.
Yes, it kind of does.
And
Yes.
it's like we need some of these places in their life where there is a natural release. And I
Yes.
think, I know for my daughter, it was riding her bike. For another daughter, it was pulling apart all the recycling. She'd just go through and rip it all into shreds. And for others, it's, for me, it was baseball. And for, the list goes on and on. We all have kind of our own natural things that we're drawn
Yes.
to, because when we can get out some of that energy, it allows us to come back into the traffic circle
That's right.
and
And
maybe get
yes.
to the adaptation.
And I'm glad you're bringing this up, Tamara, because I didn't have time to address this. It is so important. I tried to allude to it in the fact that our approach to sadness must be a little bit indirect in terms of whether it's ourselves or others. And that is where play really comes in. We have easier access as one step removed. The last thing we should do is, you need to find your tears, or to be able to say to ourselves, we need to do this. It just doesn't work this way. It's just like telling yourself to go to sleep. Well, now you won't. Tell yourself to feel sad. Well, now you won't. It's just like you can't get there that way. It kind of comes up when you least suspect it. When somebody puts an arm around you and says, it's really not working for you today, is it? Oh, it just comes. It's like it's indirect. It's like a permission. It's like you fall into something that you fight so much, and then we fight into it. And that's where I said, it's like, it's so much easier in a story, one step removed, where there's some sadness in it. So much easier in those things. And what's important is when you notice that a child is bypassing sadness, going right from mad to attack, and they're bypassing it, then it's bringing into their life the things that make it a bit easier to feel sad, but do it indirectly. They don't need to feel sad about that particular issue. It is more that they're able to find access to the sadness. When they find access to the sadness will find what it needs to find sad about. We don't have to push it in front of their face. The sadness will find the things that will be there. Our job is just to open it up. You see, I want to open up all of these things, and sorry, because I didn't get a chance to do that. So it's just like, yes.
But it all comes back to the same thing, which is frustration is seeking expression, and it has work to do. And so how do we help it along? And I mean, that's the key thing. We keep walking around. And you painted 3 different doorways and avenues here for this. But this avenue towards, I think the importance of play is really critical and distinguishes, I think, a lot of what your work is built upon. I think it's very distinct in terms of this approach, because there is such a tremendous push today to find words for our feelings. Now, that's wonderful, to words for emotions, so it can be moved into feelings. But what is not recognized is that sometimes we're not there. And instead of trying to boss our emotional system around, or boss the brain around as if we have some arrogant position that we know better here through our thinking, when the brain has its own reasons, there's always been this beautiful doorway, which you talked about, which is play, which requires no words, which provides this beautiful safety for expression, because it's not real. Like, how many times have we come alongside kids who are fighting, at least we think they're fighting, and there's foul frustration, and they'll say to us, I'm just playing. And or how many people get so frustrated when they see some sort of destructive type of play that really isn't, it's destroying whatever, it's not hurting anybody, but this is going to lead to violence. Well, the lack of expression of frustration into play is actually the greater risk here.
Exactly.
And so play, there is a place for words, and there must be a place where no words are required, because we're going to be really stuck if words are our own door. Like, I can't find them sometimes. There's just too much. And so play is the unsung hero here as well, is also a champion for frustration.
Yes, it is. Well, it takes care. It takes care, and it wants to take care. So, play is, if I personify play, I say, come on, give it to me. Give it to me. I can take it. Give your frustration to me. Let's save your mom and dad here. You'll need them. Give it to me. Let's go. Let's have some fun. Like, I personify these things in my mind, because you could just see how the brain wants to work. Like, the brain goes, if I could personify it, I put this instinct there for a purpose. Now, that a lot of things need to be taken, and it is what takes care of us. Again,
again, it's believing like, oh my goodness, it's just allowing these play to take care of us and take care of our children in this way. But sometimes we need to help it along by finding this place instead of just trying to put the stuff the frustration back into the bottle. It's very hard to do that. It's got to go someplace. And if you go and come alongside your child, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, calm down, be quiet, get yourself into the green zone when you're in the red zone. Get your emotional tool case, tap your head and give yourself a hug. And I'm just like, what happened to the invitation for our emotions?
Yes.
How can you grow if there's no invitation? And there's this idea that you must take care of your big emotions alone. I won't say how old I am, but I'm not at that place where I could take care of my emotions on my own. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's exactly it, Deborah. I was going to say that when you were talking about that. This is where we've gone to in a lot of places, maybe not. I mean, there's people here from all over the world. So I will just say here in North America, we have moved to this place of helping our children manage their own emotion. And we put so much focus, and that puts so much pressure. And when really we need to be taking the lead, we need to be able to see, okay, this child is frustrated, but we don't tell them, you can't handle yourself. We say, oh my goodness, this child is frustrated. How are we going to help come alongside that? Or is there ways that we can help him get him out? Can we, match make him to the coach so that he can do a lap around the track before he comes into class? Or do we send him to the music teacher so that he can go on the drums for a bit before he goes into math class? How do we, I'm a little bit of a rant here. How do we,
Yes.
I recognize my energy, I'm frustrated.
Let it do its work, Tamara.
Well, it starts with seeing frustration as legitimate. Instead of calm down, don't be upset, get a hold of yourself. It goes like it's legitimate. The brain is being signaled that something isn't working here. Everything is motivated to do something. It's turning foul. It can be turned foul very quickly because frustration is very quick. Like, I can't get out here. I can't get out there. I can't get the sadness. I can't change the situation. Okay, I failed. And frustration gets mad at itself. And that's what we feel is all of those impulses. I've failed. And so it's just, again, it's just coming at it from the whole place of invitation rather than inhibition. If you push down on it, then it just becomes more, when control is the issue. But when you look at this, even in yourself and your frustration, you take a good relationship with your own frustration, self-control is the fruit. It is, it's the fruit, a natural fruit of it, the spontaneous fruit. You don't even have to try. It's the fruit of a fully functioning traffic circle.
Yeah, well, and I think we miss that piece. And I just want to say one more thing, because in my experience as a school counselor, I remember having a lot of young children come to me, and they were about ages of it's kind of between 7 and 9, and I started noticing this pattern. And they would come to me having had a previous history of being quite aggressive. That was their label. They were quite aggressive. The acting out of this frustration is how we would understand it here.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they were coming to me with depression problems or self-attack, and nobody could kind of make sense of this. But you could see what had happened is their mixed feelings had come, which made them more civilized. But now it had turned on themselves, and they were having all these, like, I wish I was never born. And they were having all these fantasies of attack. Not that they were acting on it, but it was very troubling to the people around because the frustration was still there. Nothing had changed. There was no adaptation happening.
It doesn't make you any less frustrated
that's what I'm trying to say.
when you try to control it. Doesn't make it. In fact, you get thwarted by thwarted. And one way of thinking of this kind of depression and frustration can lead to depression. So one kind of a way of thinking of depression that's rooted in frustration is that it's a traffic jam. All you have to do is think of all the whole, in comes
outlets are
frustration.
blocked.
There's no outlets, right?
Yeah.
And it's a traffic jam. And this is the classic, what's called classic depression. Is it was called that depression was that there was no affect, there was no feeling. Everything was nothing was moving. And so that's that idea of that traffic jam. And I was very susceptible to that, very susceptible, because I had lots of mixed feelings as an adolescent, and there were things that I was up against that I could not to change. And I was very slow to tears, very slow to sadness. And so and I would go into this sometimes for months at a time. I know that well. And oh my goodness, I've had hundreds of clients actually that have worked through with that. It's a very common kind of depression, the traffic jam of frustration, a very common kind of depression. And it's the same thing again. Call it, instead of calling it by depression, something isn't working for me. Now I'm up against things that I cannot change. Look at that. I'm having difficulty finding my sadness about it. But I don't want to hurt my loved ones. And you just walk through this and you notice a whole softening inside. And of course, that's when it is that frustration needs to turn into sadness to do its work of adaptation.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, oh, it's such a powerful reframe and understanding of depression, and so much more humanizing, and one that you can feel hopeful about finding your way out. I was thinking, Tamara, when you were talking, working with youth at risk in my early days as a counselor, and just, there was a point that you touched on, Gordon, I'm just going to come back to it, is just that sometimes, yes, we need to find our tears. Yes, we need to feel the frustration. So much is emphasized on the child calming down. There's one of the ways that we sometimes have to take the lead on frustration is to figure out what's driving it for the child. And maybe we need to take some action to say, like those kids that you were dealing with, Tamara, there was frustration there for good reason. How can we mobilize the world that is around them in their school or at home to reduce the separation that they were feeling, to reduce the load in their brain from having to be so loud with frustration, to signal? Maybe we need to look at it as a signal that we have to have a call to action to change something for this child, that it isn't always just the child that needs to change. And sometimes, like, there are problems that you couldn't expect a child to have that many tears or words for, and even just playing it out, what we're asking here, like sometimes we have to change the child's world, and we have a responsibility that way. And so I oftentimes think about that as something that we miss. Where is it that we make it better for this child to live in the world that they have? What is it telling us?
And that's our entry. When we say that I can see something isn't working for you, if there's any sense of responsibility at all, that's our entry. That we say, is this something that I should be doing something about? Is this something that I can reduce the frustration? This load is not necessary. And of course, that's exactly where is the question that I said in the first walk around, where the outcome is impulses to attack. The first walk around is how the greatest fountain, the greatest source, the greatest is facing separation from those attached to.
Yeah. Well,
there's an irony here. I just mentioned this other example with my youngest son. I went to give a keynote in Canada's first conference on violence, and to present the material that I was trying to present here. Had a bit more time at that conference, not much, but a bit more time. My youngest was 4 and remarkably free of any tantrums. Daddy was gone for the longest he had ever been gone from his son, me. I came back, and of course I'm a psychologist, so I count things. All of a sudden I was going from maybe 1 tantrum a week to 10 tantrums a day. And what had happened? All the frustration from not being able to keep his daddy close. And it was me. And where was I? Going to speak about aggression and violence on the other side of Canada. You know, in a sense, it was very ironic. And I had to sit and look at how responsible I was, because there's things that I could have done to preserve the connection went away. And if I would have preserved that connection went away, there wouldn't have been this added frustration.
Mhm.
Well,
But
we-
what a messenger, I was just gonna say, what a messenger frustration was that you were his answer and he was attached. You know, I mean, in the face of the separation, it screamed to life to say, I want my dad. And
That's
what a
right.
cue for us to say, okay, how am I going to be your dad and travel and work and hold on to you? But then
That's
at least
right.
we have the question in front of us that we can
Yes.
solve, right?
Yes.
I can bridge this. I can
I
call.
can do
leave
something about
behind.
it. Yes.
Well, and you can help, like there's a lot of questions coming in around adaptation too, and you can help actually facilitate the missing. You can anticipate the missing, that it's okay to miss. Oh, we are so afraid of it, right? We're so afraid of the
Yes.
sadness, but it's actually a good thing that your son missed you, you know?
Yes.
And this is you know,
Yes.
something that we often are afraid of, and I think to help facilitate that, anticipate it, find gentle ways, you know, there
Make
may
it
be,
easier to feel sad about that. Have some stories about it
yeah.
that would have been appropriate. Young, sing a song about it.
Yeah.
You know, there would have been ways not only to reduce the separation, but make it easier to feel some of the sadness around missing. But again, missing, as you say, and both of you were saying, but it's the way it should have been. You know, like, and of course he was frustrated with it. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it'd be terrible if he wasn't. Of course he missed. That's a good thing. Making room for those, and the story of adaptation is really a story of feeling the futility we encounter. It's when the brain realizes I can't get through this way, and feeling the futility we encounter. And the closest words we have for that is sadness and disappointment. So it's making room for that, and that's okay. That's okay. No, that's a whole another story, but that's, you know, part of it, that the sadness is okay too, just like frustration is.
Mhm.
And I want to go back for a minute too, because there's something that came up when you talked about the thwarted proximity in that slide, and you talked about the thwarted proximity where attached. And I think here we're talking about the ideal scenario where we want the child to be attached to us as the parent,
Yes.
as the caregiver, as the teacher. But what if they're not? Right. And I think of a lot of the kids that I worked with at the school, there was a lot of attachment energy going, for example, to their devices. And so seeing a lot of frustration when it came to thwarted proximity with their device.
Yes, or
and
the thwarted agendas, or the thwarted, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And not understanding that, well, this is actually where the child is attached right now.
Mhm.
This is where the attachment energy is going. It may not be all the time, but if that's where the attachment energy is going, or whether it's to a peer or whether, then that is where they're going to feel that
That's right.
incredible frustration.
It is where they're attached, and that's such an important question, to scan that. I'll never forget my example with a very a girl who was had been very brain damaged by early abuse, hitting her head, and there just wasn't much room for her brain to grow, so there wasn't that much to work with. But she didn't have any aggression, because the only thing she was attached to is Barbie dolls, and she took her Barbie doll set with her wherever it was. But of course, Barbie dolls can't raise a child. And so she was adopted by a wonderful mother, a single parent, who said, okay, how do I help her? Said, well, we're going to first of all work at attaching her to you, because you're her best bet. She's stuck. But as soon as she gets attached to you, she's going to face separation she's never faced before. She has no access to sadness. She has no mixed feelings. So we are going to have an emotional storm, a perfect storm for aggression. Well, then we shouldn't do it, the mother said. I said, no, we need to do this. But sometimes, and so we did, and the aggression was huge. And then we found a way of preserving the contact and find the sadness. And finally, she found some mixed feelings, even though her prefrontal cortex did not have much room to grow. She still found this, and it all resolved itself ultimately. But all of this is to say, sometimes it will get worse before it gets better. You know, sometimes it will be, because if a child is attached to the wrong things in the wrong way, and that's not, you know, they can't be raised by their peers. They're not their best bet. So sometimes when you move to cultivate the attachment a child needs, now they are facing separation that they didn't face before, physical separation or separation in other ways, and so the frustration goes higher. But when you know the traffic circle, you know that there's hope. There is hope, like you know how it should work. And that is the beauty of it. You know that frustration it can fail and turn in its work and turn foul, but you know ways of helping frustration and buying time when there's a lot of foul frustration in you by using play. So it's worth it to go that way, even though you know that it will get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, because now if there's a little bit of room, now that if it's been pressed down upon, now if there's some room. And now these attacks, I've had that happen actually with some adults that I've been working with, that all of a sudden it surprises them, because all of a sudden these outbursts come out because there's been a little bit of permission.
Yes.
And now, like, what do I do with that? And that can be alarming, and alarming when that comes out, and yet it's all part of that process. How do we eventually we find our way to those healthy places where it's okay, or those acceptable places, right?
Yes. But it starts with accepting frustration as a given. So we're not fighting the frustration, Then we start working at a fully functioning traffic circle in ourselves and in others. But to take frustration as a given, the last thing we should be saying is don't be upset, calm down. No, frustration is a given. We are meant, the emotion means two things. It means to move and to be stirred up. And emotions are for us, not against us. It's the way nature takes care of us. They have a purpose. So we should be welcoming the stirred upness, welcoming it. It's messy. Life is always messy. It wasn't meant to be clean, all tidy. It's a bit messy, but there's a way of doing this that really, really doesn't interfere with the unfolding of full potential.
Well,
and I was just going to say, and how to reframe when frustration turns foul, because I think that's when we have our greatest challenges, is when it is foul. That whole eruption, volcano, and all the myriad of symptomology that can come from frustration turning foul, and how we lose our way to see that this is frustration that has not had its day to change or change us.
Yes.
That we don't need to get lost in those symptoms and that turn to the foul, but that it just means that we've missed our loop in the traffic circle, and we need to come back and have patience and have faith that it's the focus on frustration, and through play, through words, through relationship, through reducing separation, finding a way to dance with the frustration that will help us find our way through. But I think that performance of frustration is where we get really, really stuck.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like in my own experience in working with families and with parents, educators, there also is the change piece, right? And sometimes there are things that we are able to change, and so it's also recognizing when that is possible and when it's not,
to help with the problem solving.
And
here, let me help you. This is the way you work the scissors. Here, let me help you. Yes.
So
absolutely.
it's not that we are trying, but I also also recognize that when we can actually go to the adaptation piece, when we can actually face our own futility about what's not working in the situation, as a parent, something really just, we really wanted it to work a certain way and it's not working for our child. And that when we can have that process open, it allows us to go back around and find some of those ways that we might be able to change things, or we find different solutions. It's where that resourcefulness and resilience comes from.
And that's where the wisdom comes in, again, as a traffic director. The wisdom comes in. Sometimes it's to come alongside the frustration in a child and help them effect the change that would make a difference, so things are less frustrating. Sometimes there's nothing left to do but have some sadness, but it's not going to happen now. And so, you look around and say, it's happening in their life. Do I need to make it a little bit easier to feel some of the sadness, one step removed in play form? And then sometimes there's just so much frustration. There needs to be, a little bit of relief here. We need to find a safe outhouse for it to be able to bring down the traffic in the traffic circle, because the traffic is just too much. And so it's the wisdom to know that, but you wouldn't know that unless, again, you started with the fact that it's frustration you're working with, and that frustration is trying to do its work. And so this is we can go with the program, right, rather than against it.
Yeah. Well, and with it. Yeah, because we try to fight it, right? We try to fight it.
Well, I think we're so great at fixing things, and the more mature we get, and cognitively we have experience to help us solve problems, fix problems, throw more resources at it. And I think sometimes the hardest thing to do is just stop. And we are programmed to stop. But my goodness, some of us have our own frustration driving change. I mean, it's in all of us. But I think the hardest conversation is the hardest walk sometimes is towards futility and to a full stop, because you're facing separation from your agenda. You're facing separation from your goals, your outcomes, your preferences, your wants, your wishes. So you actually have to put your face into separation when you're looking at futility. And, that's a harder walk. And I think we have to be patient with ourselves. I haven't found any magic this way. I just only yearn for it when I'm in that place, and have so much more humility and grace for myself, and knowing that this is a harder walk for me. And I think for so many people to full stop.
And Deborah, I think it's important also to remind people is that we need to access our sadness in order to let go. We don't let go to feel sad. We need to access our sadness. Our sadness allows us to let go where we need to let go. And so again, our feelings will take care of us if we let ourselves feel those, and nothing could be more important to feel than frustration and sadness, along with missing and attachment and so on. But
and we have to feel safe to feel, and we have to feel healing relationships. So we understand, we may be wired this way, but oh my goodness, it can take so much. It's such a luxury to get to those vulnerable feelings and to feel them.
But that whole piece about feeling safe too, I know there were some questions coming in, around what is the relationship between frustration and anxiety. And I think of all of our emotion, and you look at the underlying alarm, underlying anxiety, and this is too one of our core emotions, so we have these core emotions that are evoked, and it's in a similar way we could do this again, right, through the traffic circle, because frustration and anxiety, frustration and alarm, they go
they're both responses. They're both responses to facing separation, to a lack of togetherness. So they're both anxiety. We throw a bit of cognition at it. Like anxiety. How should I put it? Anger is to frustration as anxiety is to alarm. It's the same thing. When you start going to the underlying, you say, oh, I'm alarmed. don't know why I'm alarmed, but I feel so alarmed. You start naming it properly instead of, of I'm agitated or anxious. Again, you get to more what alarm is trying to do. Notify us that we're facing separation, move us to caution. You get what alarm is trying to do.
And you can feel how these emotions are incredible, as you always say, Gordon, workhorses. They're workhorses
right.
in the emotional system, and how we should have some respect and some humility in the face of these
Yes.
powerful emotions that nature gave us, to serve our emotional health and well-being and our relationships, and to be these incredible signals to help us.
Respect and humility is exactly what it is.
Mhm.
A little bit of awe,
Yeah.
a little bit of, just, my goodness, nature really is taking care of us, and our brain is incredibly uh, uh, constructed,
Yeah.
And for us.
Well,
for us.
and for us. Yeah. Well, and I am recognizing we're just a couple minutes out here, and I think if some of you are finding yourself frustrated, wanting to know more, or have questions, and want to continue, I mean, we could keep going, I think.
I think so.
But we won't, but we
Yes,
could.
I
It's like
think so.
midnight some places. And,
I felt badly because I got the opportunity to fill in this, fill in that, fill in
Yeah.
this, etc.
Well, there is a lot, and I feel like I personally am really excited because we're going to be taking a little bit of a walk around. A natural kind of flow from this is our Reaching Troubled Kids series that we're doing, and this is really exciting because we're doing something a little bit different. Dr. Neufeld's going to anchor that with a presentation on what he means by that, what he means by troubled, and what does that look like, and where do things get stuck, and we're going to be offering it to different cohorts, everywhere from educators, school counselors, clinical counselors, early childhood educators. There's going to be an Indigenous focus. There's also one that we're doing on kids in foster adopt situations. So it's an exciting project, and it's going to be starting in October, a few weeks from now. And also we have a preschoolers course, and there's a lot of frustration happening in a preschooler. A lot of the attacking
And their
energy
parents.
and their parents, yes. And we have a book about that Deborah wrote, Rest, Play, Grow, which is all about the preschooler. And so there's basically this course is the same kind of content as that, as that is walking through what are kind of the natural processes that are happening at that age.
Especially when there's no mixed feelings yet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's coming up. We have, of course, our flagship courses, our intensive Making Sense of Kids, which is a bit of a deep dive, but for those that are really serious about wanting to deep dive, that's happening too. I think it just starts tomorrow, I think. But
that's where I get more time to walk out the logic.
20 hours.
Yes, to walk out the logic of it, so you can internalize it deep inside. So it's not just an idea, but it's a, it's actually a paradigm, a way of thinking.
Well, and you'll get all of this, you'll get some of this information just to point you if you're interested, if it's something that you would like. We also have all kinds of free resources now on our website. We actually have quite a few panels that the three of us have done starting in the pandemic, and in 2020, and at the beginning, I should say, and carried on through. So you can find those on our free resources on our website.
And thanks again for I enjoy doing it with you, Deborah and Tamara. It's always fun, and thanks. I was kind of. I kind of finish a presentation like that, and then it's like okay, it's finished, and so it was good to unpack it a bit. Thank you for helping me unpack.
And thank you to all of you who are here with us and who stayed to the end and didn't go after the first 18 minutes. Appreciate you being with us as we walked around this. Really enjoyed your comments, your questions, tried to bring in as many as we could. Thank you to our team who was answering behind the scenes here. appreciate you so much. And we wish you all the best as you handle or make room for the frustration. Come alongside
Yes.
the frustration in your own life, whatever that looks like.
We wish for you to become good traffic circle directors.
Champions of frustration.
Yes, champions of frustration. That's good. That's a good way to
And
end
it
it.
won't be long before you'll be tested on that.
Yes, that's right. Like today, later on, or tomorrow morning. Yes, it won't be long at all.
Yes. So wishing you all the best.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.